How to talk with your parents about estate planning. Seeing my parents get older was very uncomfortable for me. It's something I still vividly remember. Unfortunately, my parents have passed away and they were very old school, and I could not have a conversation with them about inheritance or what to do with the assets that they own. And this led to my sister and I actually losing out on a large portion of the assets my parents had previously held. I'm not going to go into great details here, but it would have been nice to own a couple more homes if I'd been able to talk with my parents earlier. But this is a conversation that every family, in my opinion, should have. My name is Mike Pugh. I've been an estate planner for more than a decade in the UK, and I've helped hundreds of families have that conversation about inheritance and estate planning. Therefore, today we're going to talk about how to talk with your parents about estate planning. I know it's not an easy conversation, but definitely a conversation that needs to be had. When speaking with parents, what it comes down to is that the parents just don't want to discuss anything like this, especially with kids. This can be because the kid's approach to this conversation might not be the right one, and changing the angle of approach can produce a much better outcome. Keep in mind that no one wants to talk about their own death, and rarely do we want to speak with our kids about sex or money or death. That's just not what we do. And while we can't get over it, there really is a natural aversion towards these things. So why go directly into the worst conversation imaginable? Nobody wants to do that. Nobody's going to be talking about it like that. I'd like you to consider a slightly more tactful approach, and the different tact that we're going to talk about with estate planning basically includes two big ideas: pre-death and post-death. And the second one is always the more interesting one, because this is the one about creating legacy. The first thing we should talk about with our parents is their future medical needs and how that's going to be taken care of. It might sound like, Mom, Dad, I'd like to talk to you about your future and what we need to set up, probably a lasting power of attorney for health and welfare in case or in the event where you're just not capable of making a go of it. Now legally somebody can help take care of you. For the record, everyone over the age of 18 needs an LPA. I need one. You need one, everybody needs one. In most families, it's the spouse and the kids that should be the attorneys. And by putting this document in place, you guarantee that your loved ones can speak to doctors. Here's a true story, and it's from my life. I put together lasting power of attorneys for my aunt and uncle who live in Portishead, and sadly, my uncle passed away in 2014 from illness. What was really shocking, really surprising, was that the doctors would not speak with my aunt until she showed them my uncle's lasting power of attorney for health and welfare. I mean, she had all the documents, but of course didn't follow my advice. I'm the nephew. Thankfully, we were able to get a hold of the documents and get everything straightened out. But it was a really stressful time, and it didn't need to have to happen. So don't think that just because you're married, or maybe you're the child, you're going to have a say in matters. That couldn't be further from the truth, and you could be in for a real shock, and also a lot of grief if you're not actually part of your partner's or parent's situation. Also, the government will now step in because they will take charge of all decisions regarding your parent or partner, and that means they can dictate where the care will be delivered and how. This may not be what anyone in the family actually wants, so it's best to have this conversation and get that started, and from my own experience, the earlier the better. The second part of this first idea is to sort out a second lasting power of attorney for property and financial affairs. Now, you can explain to your parents that even though you are their child, this doesn't mean the bank's just going to hand you their money because you need to pay their bills. I mean, that would be like me going down to your bank and saying, I'm your best friend and give me your money because you need me to pay your bills. We very much hope the bank will not give out any of our money to anybody other than the account holder, and that includes spouses. So having a lasting power of attorney for property and financial affairs will allow the normal day-to-day operations of your life and your parents' life to continue, even if your parents aren't able to do it for themselves. And this would be a conversation I would definitely want to have with my parents. For the record, you should never be reaching into your parents' bank accounts to do anything other than using those funds to support and maintain them. Otherwise, you could get yourself into trouble as a child, and you can even go so far to tell your parents this. Remember, it's almost always easier to use your parents' money to take care of your parents, because if you don't have a lasting power of attorney, realistically, you're going to put your hand in your pocket and pay their bills on top of your own bills while you're waiting for a deputyship application with the Court of Protection. I mean, if you have to make a deputyship application with the Court of Protection that will allow you then to take care of your parents, this can easily cost between £4,000 to £6,000. No joke. So as always, you've heard this, an ounce of planning is worth a pound of cure, or in this case, maybe about 6,000 pounds. Now let's go to the second big idea I mentioned, and this is the area where I want you to permit yourself to dream a little bit. When you're sitting there talking with your parents, don't ask them, what's going to happen with your stuff? Instead, ask, what kind of legacy do you want to leave? Really simply, most people want to leave a positive legacy. What is really important to them, we don't know until you ask. You have to remember, the assets are really a byproduct of all the work that they've done. That shouldn't be the thing that defines them. So some opening questions might be like, what do you want to happen with the family china? Should that go to this person or that person? Do you have any jewelry you'd like to leave to any certain children? This kind of thing tends to get that conversation opening. But what you really want to do is help your parents to see the positive side of planning. And now you can have a positive impact on the family literally for generations to come. You see, we don't live in a soulless transactional universe. In fact, it's not purely a death and distribution scenario. And this is where trusts can actually start to really help. Statistically, whenever people get a windfall, the recipient of that windfall is very likely to lose it. Bad news. This means on every pound they receive, sometime over the next 5 years, there'll only be a couple pence left. Having a trust means that your parents' name can live for an additional 125 years down through the family, and it also increases the chances of holding on to the wealth, as there needs to be a minimum of 2 trustees. This way, it's unlikely both are going to run down to the local gambling den and gamble it all away or suffer some kind of mass hallucination. Now you can talk about having a positive impact with your parents for their descendants, including their grandchildren, their great-grandchildren, their great-great-great-great-grandchildren. If they want to have that positive impact, it's best to talk about legacy. The rich, for the record, have been doing this in the UK for several hundred years. They don't think in terms of 20 or 30 years. So start by asking them about what type of legacy they want to create. Do they think education is super important? Great, then set up a lifetime trust. And now your assets are held in trust for future generations, and your parents can also put guidance on for the trustees. And that means the money is there to support education, educational endeavors. And that means their legacy is all about helping the family to get smarter. Or, truly, maybe your parents loved travel, and they've traveled widely around the world because they believe travel broadens your perspective and your horizons, and that's really what they want their legacy to be. Humans are unique in that we can support our future family members, including our descendants and ones that we will never meet. And they can follow in our footsteps, and we can offer guidance and advice for what we think is important. You can create that. Your parents' legacy may be international travel or education or whatever it is that they desire. Therefore, when they pass, their assets that are in trust can stick with the bloodline and be available for future generations to pursue the endeavors that your parents can define. Unlike other creatures on this earth, we can plan for the future. The future can be written. That's it for this week. I hope that this has been helpful. Let me know in the comments section down below if you have any questions. I answer every single question. And if you did find this video helpful, I really appreciate it if you smash that like button. It doesn't cost you anything, and it can possibly help another family here in the UK. I release a video every week, so if you want to keep up to date, hit the subscribe button too. See you in the next video.